Hello, friends, and welcome back to Scaling Stories. Today, I've got some more highly upvoted posts from Best of Redditor updates for you all. Like always, I'll be reading you the posts and giving you my opinions, and I'll also be working on building up my Forever World at the same time, so I hope you enjoy. Also, I'm currently only in Spotify's creator program, so watching on there would help me out a ton. Thank you so much for your support. Today's story comes from the Legal Advice subreddit. It was posted by kshucker on February 21, 2017, and was titled Neighbor Harassment. Is there anything I can do? So, about 2 months ago, I posted here on r/legal advice that I moved into my first home and was warned by a friend who used to be a police officer that my new neighbor would call the police for, what he said, everything you could imagine in the past. Dogs barking, loud cars, loud kids at the playground across the street, people walking on the sidewalk in front of her house, etc., etc. My first post here was asking if there was anything I could do legally to keep her at bay from calling the police. This was about a week before I moved into the home, and pretty much every response to me was laughing at me and telling me that if I wasn't a bad neighbor, she wouldn't need to call the police. I took it with a grain of salt. Fast forward to moving day, and we pull up to the house in a U-Haul. About 30 minutes later, a police officer pulls up in his cruiser and checks in on us because they received a call from somebody in the neighborhood. I asked what the call was about, and he said he couldn't tell me, but we just told him we bought the house and had some friendly small talk, and he was on his way. I'm convinced that it was our neighbor who made the call to the police. All we were doing was moving in. A week later, it snows, and I'm outside shoveling, and so is my neighbor. I get to talking to her, and within 30 seconds, she starts bragging, more or less, about how she will call the cops on everybody and everything. I couldn't believe it. I Google searched her name, and an article popped up about a harassment charge she acquired 3 years ago. She got into a verbal altercation with a neighbor, and she hit them with a spade shovel. She seems like a really upstanding citizen. Fast forward to present time. Last night, it was unusually warm. I decided to get a fire going in our fire pit in the backyard. Before I could even get it lit, she's knocking on the fence and asks if she can talk to me. She says, "I don't know what you guys are planning on doing over there, but there aren't too many people having fires with 10 to 15 miles per hour gusts. If any of that smoke makes its way into my house, I'm going to have to make a call." I tell her that we were still going to have a fire and we'd be inside in about an hour. So, my question is, if she keeps threatening to make calls or have police show up at my door when I'm doing nothing illegal, is there anything I can do in terms of harassment or getting a restraining order? Scaling Stories Corner. So this is a post from r/legal advice. And so if the future updates are also in legal advice, that means there aren't any top or relevant comments because that subreddit doesn't allow updates like that. Like, you're allowed to post updates, but it gets locked by the bot so people can't comment afterwards, in case you didn't know. So I guess if that's the case, then you're just stuck with me. But yeah, a neighbor like this must be so miserable to live next to. I'm not gonna lie, if I was OP, I would kind of counter the pettiness if what she is doing is allowed. Like, if she can call the cops on me for whatever reason and she's not getting punished for it, like, okay, bet, I'm calling the cops on her too. And I think eventually the cops would get tired of our crap and tell us to stop or else, right? Or not. And like, if not, then like, I guess I'm calling the cops hella and she's still calling the cops hella. And I just don't believe that something doesn't give in first. And it sure as hell won't be me giving in first out of my own free will. But yeah, obviously if she can't do what she's doing, then I'm not going to do crap either. Now here are some of the top/relevant comments from the original post. Commenter 1 says, "Let the boy cry wolf. Eventually, the police will take action, or they will deprioritize her calls. Then you rob her. It's the perfect plan." OP says, "Lamau. I love it. But seriously, her always having to have input on what we're doing and how she doesn't like it is going to get old real quick." Commenter 2 says, "The police will soon realize that she's a nutcase. Dispatch will start to inform her that her reports don't amount to crimes, or she will be cited for false reports. I wouldn't do anything to deliberately antagonize her, and be careful with illegal substances, etc. But go ahead and enjoy yourself. If she threatens to make a call, tell her to go for it." OP says, "My next plan of action is to have a copy of all of our city's ordinances, noise, fire, etc., on hand at all times. If she wants to talk to me about the fire again, I'll just pass her the legal paperwork for the city's fire ordinance and point out that I'm in complete compliance with it. I'm a 28-year-old man. I'm a veteran. When I'm not at work, I just like to sit outside, enjoy the weather, and drink a few beers. That's all I want to be able to do without being pestered. Commenter 3 says, please tell me you have a privacy fence, a gate, and a no trespassing sign. I guarantee this Looney Tune will come into your yard to snoop or harass someday. Call the cops if she ever does. Also, make friends with the other neighbors. Helps to stick together against the crazy. OP says, she has a fence around her entire yard, so yes, there's a fence between her and us. Also, all of the other neighbors in the neighborhood apparently cannot stand her. Everybody on our street has said they had the cops called on them by her for one thing or another when nothing was ever wrong. She's seriously insane, and I'm starting to wonder if the previous owners of our home were driven out because of the neighbor. Update 3 days later. I'll try and keep this short. I took all of the comments I read about what to do into consideration. Most suggested investing in a security camera system. As much as I don't want to do this, I'm going to have to. Today, February 24th, 2017, while I'm at work, my significant other had to run to the store for something before work. My significant other has to drive past our house to get to work from the store. My significant other said that while passing our house, our crazy neighbor lady is in our front yard with a leaf blower, blowing leaves around our yard, knowing that nobody was home in our house. Clearly on our property, no questions asked. I am effing irate. Security cameras are being bought today and being installed as soon as possible. At what point is trespassing actually trespassing? I do not want her on my property, but she was clearly on my property. A part of me wants to say she was doing what she was doing to get our dog worked up inside of our house. I'm desperately looking for some help here. Edit. Message the mods so this isn't locked anymore. OP says in a comment, I'll give another quick update here. I can tell her that she was seen in our front yard today all I want, but there is no physical proof of it, so there's nothing I can legally do about it, and she can just keep denying that it ever happened. I actually only live 1 block away from where I work and went home on my lunch break today. I went out back and sat down on the steps. She was leaf blowing. There are no effing leaves where we live right now. It's February in Pennsylvania. Dirt and sticks under the fence onto my property. I just sat there and saw the dirt and stick cloud coming closer and closer and closer to me. She must have seen me sitting there once she could get a decent peek through the boards of the fence and immediately turned around and started blowing the middle of her yard. I think I startled her because she thought nobody was home at our place. I evaluated what had just happened and realized I didn't have any substantial evidence for anything worthwhile. I could have asked her what she thought she was doing, blowing crap into my yard, but at this point, it would have just gone into a petty argument back and forth. So I waited a minute or two, stood up, waved at her, and yelled hello over to her. As somebody else said here, kill her with kindness. That's what I tried to do. We made small talk about our dogs and how nice the weather was. She apologized about Sunday night with the fire. See previous Reddit post about that. I basically told her that we're allowed to do what we want to do if it's legal. Still going to be getting cameras. I don't trust the lady at all. The weirdest thing of all is that when I was talking to her through the fence today, she said, "Oh, are you already done with work for the day?" Mind you, I was not in my work outfit. I completely changed into everyday clothing when I got home to make it look like I didn't just come home from work. It seems like she knows my schedule, which weirded me out a bit. ScalingStories Corner. Oof. I mean, yeah, cameras are definitely a must in this situation. Otherwise, it's going to be a game of he said, she said. And this neighbor is just bored with her life, I think. Like, she's got nothing else going for her, so she probably finds enjoyment out of making everyone else's lives around her miserable. It probably gives her some sense of power and control over her day-to-day life, which would otherwise be super dull and lifeless. So, yeah, that's pretty sad. Second update 6 weeks later. TLDR at the bottom as well. And for the lazy who won't click the links, I'll give a quick overview of what's happening. Bought my first home in December. Neighbor likes to call the cops for everything you can imagine. Neighbor infringes on our privacy whenever we are outside and threatens to call the cops on us for no reason. Now, bear with me here. I don't have the exact dates to go off of since I am at work and on my lunch break. I will guesstimate as best as possible with dates. So we left my first update where me and my significant other caught our crazy neighbor lady in our front yard blowing leaves around. Nobody was home at the time, and my significant other drove by the house and saw it. That's how we know. A lot of people suggested getting a security camera system, and I said I would be getting one as soon as possible. Other financial issues came up, and I had to put off on the camera system for a few weeks. This is where the second update starts. Fast forward from February to March 15th, question mark. It is around 9:45 p.m., and I'm out back smoking a cigarette. I see movement out of the corner of my eye and look towards it, and see this hand throwing pieces of garbage into my yard over the fence. It's crazy neighbor lady. She didn't know I was outside. Just good timing on my part, I guess. I played dumb and asked, "What are you doing, crazy neighbor lady?" And she quickly stops throwing the trash and quickly turns around to go inside of her house. As she gets closer to her door, she turns around and says, "I'm sorry, what did you say?" To which I respond loudly, "What are you doing, crazy neighbor lady?" She says she was just outside checking out her yard. Now, mind you, it's 9:45 p.m. and it had just started to snow. We were projected to get 12 plus inches of snow, so I think her plan was to throw trash into my yard and then have it be covered up by the snow. I went over to where I saw her hand coming over the fence and found a random piece of plastic and a soda lid. Think of the ones that you get from fast food places with your drink, the kind you poke a straw through. They were lying neatly on top of the leaves and mulch bed that they were thrown on. This had me livid. I caught her in the act and bought a security camera system that night on Amazon. It came within 2 days, and I set it up over that weekend. I set all of the cameras up inside of windows looking out towards my property. It took only 3 days of having the cameras to find her throwing more little pieces of trash onto our property. It's just little pieces of trash that end up in her yard. We live in a city along one of the busiest streets. It's unfortunate that people litter out of their cars, but it happens. If I see any trash in my yard, I'll pick it up and throw it out. If crazy neighbor lady sees any trash in her yard, she'll throw it into her neighbor's yards so it's not her problem. Over the period of a month, I catch her 3 different times on camera throwing trash from her property onto mine. She physically picks it up, comes onto my property, and sets it down well onto my side of the front yard when nobody is home. To some, it may sound like I'm going to the extremes to try and screw over this lady, but given her past history that I've heard from other neighbors, I'm stomping out the fire, her, before she, can even get started. Last night, I caught her on camera for the 4th time coming onto my property to throw more trash into my yard. This time, she has her dogs with her and is letting her dogs roam around without a leash in my yard. I had finally had enough and called the police to come out to look at my videos and see if there's anything I could do about her. The police officer comes out, looks at the videos, and I read him the journal of all the interactions I've had with her, and he's kind of blown away with all the work I've put into protecting myself. My neighbor is a huge pain in the ass for my city's police department. She'll make calls to them for things like the kids being too loud in the playground across the street from us. Unnecessary stuff. And they have no problem slapping her with charges if legitimate charges can be made. I could have pressed charges against her for trespassing, littering, and not having her dog on a leash, but I opted to just have the police officer go over to her house and give her a warning. I don't really have the time to take off from work to go to court. I told him to let her know that if she's ever caught on my property or throwing trash onto my property, then I will press charges. He was licking his chops to go over there and ream her ass out. The city police hate her, and like many others have probably mentioned, they take all of her calls with a grain of salt. Now I'm just waiting to see what the next chapter has in store for me. I'm sure she was told that she has been caught on camera, so I'll have to wait and see if she tries looking for my cameras. By the way, these cameras are fun to watch. It's like I'm living next to a 61-year-old child. ScalingStories Corner. OP is too nice, I think. Not that I'm that much of a vindictive person or really likes to start beef with someone for no reason, but like this lady started it first, you feel me? If that officer had told me I had the options to press charges for trespassing, littering, and not having her dogs on a leash, and it wouldn't cost me any money to do so, then like heck yeah, I'm pressing charges. I don't know if anything will actually happen, but in my mind, me doing so means that I'm actually very serious about her not screwing with my day-to-day life and property, you know? Like, she needs to know that I'm not someone she can keep screwing around with for fun, and that I'm not afraid of her like retaliating on me and calling the cops, because she's literally already frothing at the mouth to call the cops if I do anything perceived as wrong to her. So maybe if she gets in trouble for this, then she'll go pick on a different neighbor in the neighborhood and leave me the hell alone. Third update 3 months later. I truly would like to know what legal rights I have against this. Hello, r/legal advice. I feel like I'm starting to become a regular on this sub ever since I bought my house. Long story short, my neighbor will call the police if any leaves from my tree or any grass blades from me cutting my grass go into her yard. Yes, she stands out there and watches me cut the grass. Last week, we talked to one another with a police officer's presence so we could try and work something out. Basically, the moment she sees a leaf in her yard, she gets pissed. I told her I'm not home all the time to constantly monitor every single effing leaf that falls from my tree. Oh, the tree is on the opposite side of the yard from her. My yard is not littered with leaves, and the police even said that my yard looks fine, but she persists on calling the police out every time anything comes into her yard. I have done my research on the situation, as dumb as I think it is, but once a leaf falls from a tree, I'm not liable for what happens to it. That's what internet articles say, at least. Could anybody produce any sort of Pennsylvania state legal documentation that says leaves falling from a tree is not a crime? Lol. I can't believe I'm even here asking this, but I'm getting really sick of the police coming out for everything I do outside. I just want to present it to the police/neighbor so it stops. Edit. Since this blew up a little, and others have asked what I have done to her for her to do what she is doing, I will give a little more information about the past few months. Within a month of moving into the house this past December, I was out back after dark. It was no later than 8 p.m., breaking down some boxes that we had left over from moving. I took a quick break from breaking them down, and I see this hand throwing trash into my yard over the fence that separates our yards. I couldn't believe it. Up until this point, we had one interaction with one another, and that was when we were both outside shoveling snow. I introduced myself, and she introduced herself, and immediately warned me that she likes to call the police on anything that she sees wrong in the neighborhood, basically bragging about it. From that greeting to the trash being thrown into my yard, no interactions with one another. I bought a security camera system shortly after that to see how often she does it. We had bits and pieces of trash in our backyard shortly after moving in, and it was always on the side of the yard that was up against her fence. We just thought that it was whatever trash that the wind picked up and would stop at the fence, and we would pick it up whenever we would see it. Within 3 days of having the cameras, she's doing it again and is on camera doing it. I waited for it to happen on 3 more occasions. After the second time I had it on video, anytime I saw her outside when I was outside, I tried to say hello and talk to her about it, but as soon as I said hello, she would go inside. After the third time of throwing trash into my yard and being unsuccessful at talking to her about it, I called the police. There was no reason for her to be throwing trash into my yard. The police gave her a warning. The trash in our backyard that we thought was getting blown there stopped as well. Crazy. After that, I had been nothing but nice to her and would say hello whenever I saw her. I really don't want to have problems, but I had to do something about the trash being thrown into our yard. Anytime I would say hello, I would get ignored. She even went as far as to say she was going to charge me with harassment if I didn't stop. What? Last week, the police came out again for leaves in her yard. He suggested that we talk to one another while he was there to listen. She explained herself. She thinks that we are not maintaining our property well enough and is upset that we aren't outside to pick up every leaf that falls from our tree and doesn't want any grass clippings blowing into her yard. The police officer looked over at my yard and looked back at her and said there's nothing wrong with my yard and that it looks better than a lot of other properties in our city. She said that she bought her house, which doesn't have a tree, because she didn't want to clean up leaves. Newsflash, every house on our block has a tree except for hers. She just wishes that we would take care of our yard better. Again, the police officer enforced to her that, according to city law, our yard was fine. We agreed with each other that if we have any problems with one another, we would talk to each other first before getting the police involved. 8 days later, she called the police again for grass and leaves being in her yard. As far as I could tell, there wasn't any grass left behind. And when I mean in her yard, I'm not saying it is in the middle of her yard. It is mere inches from where our yard meets in her yard. She has been nothing but a headache since we moved in, and it's only getting worse. I've done nothing to her other than make sure that she stopped throwing trash in my yard. Why she started doing that? I don't know. ScalingStories Corner. Nah, that's what I was talking about. Is she actually allowed to keep calling the cops over the grass and leaves, and then nothing happens? The cops have to keep coming out and won't tell her to stop wasting their time? Because if that's the case, then you just have to start calling the cops back on her, right? Like, I don't know what for. Maybe the grass on her side came into my yard. Maybe some wood chipped off her house and fell into my part of the house. Like, I don't know. Who knows? Maybe that makes me the jerk to the cops, but like, they've got to do something about the system being abused to harass me. Like, something just doesn't sound right. There's no way someone can just keep doing this. I feel like it's only because like it's only like one person doing this that like no repercussions are like really being made here, if that's even legal at all. Because can you imagine if the whole neighborhood was doing this to each other? Like how much of a waste of time and resources it would be to the cop department? Like if multiple neighborhoods were doing this to other people and it was like severely wasting their time, then I'm pretty sure they would implement something to immediately like crack down on it, you know? But it's only like it's not really being taken that seriously here because it's just one crazy lady doing it in the neighborhood, and it just doesn't feel right. Now here are some of the top/relevant comments from the update post. Commenter 1 says, I wonder what the heck she did with the previous tenant. I mean, you didn't plant that tree. I assume it was there before you moved in. It sounds like something else is going on here. OP says, no clue. Everybody in the neighborhood says that they think she has some sort of schizophrenia. Don't get me wrong, I would be slightly upset if my yard was covered with leaves from a neighbor's tree, but I would just clean them up. We were talking about 1 or 2 leaves in her yard. 1 or 2. She has even brought up twigs in her yard to my attention. It looks like it's going to be a never-ending battle with a loony. Edit. I'm really curious to see if she calls the SWAT team out in the fall when the leaves are really going to start falling off the trees. Commenter 2 says, have you and the neighbors thought of calling Adult Protective Services for the crazy or getting a restraining order for the harassment? OP says, I actually talked to the police officer about this off to the side, the one time they were here. Restraining orders can only be placed against somebody you have a sexual relationship with or somebody within your family. Adult Protective Services can only be placed if one or the other person has been a victim of abuse. This is all what the police officer told me. Then we get into the legal definition of abuse, and that's a different rabbit hole to get lost in. The only option I have right now is mediation between me and her. A third party with no relationship to either me or my neighbor would be used to communicate any problems between one another. At the end of the day, my neighbor has standards for living and quality of life that I find insane, and if things aren't done her way, she thinks she has a right to do something legally about it. She thinks she is the law. I'm not doing my job well enough by maintaining my yard to her standards, so she calls the police about it. Asinine. Fourth update, 1 year later. Long story short, I have an absolutely crazy neighbor. I have talked about her in r/legal advice because of her antics and how I should handle them. I have even had to get the police involved in the petty stuff she does to have her knock it off. On to the killing of my grass. About a month ago, I noticed that all of my grass along the fence between my neighbor and myself was completely dried up and dead. The dead grass starts about 6 inches from the fence and goes the entire length of the fence, probably 75 feet. Crazy neighbor lady's grass is completely fine along the fence. The only thing I can think of is that she's spraying something under the fence onto my side to kill my grass. Now I've got nothing but ugly weeds growing up along the fence. Today, I noticed a brown circle, probably 2 feet in diameter, of dead grass in my backyard. It's no more than 10 feet away from my neighbor's fence. My girlfriend says she took our 2 small dogs out to go to the bathroom, and they were rolling around and eating the dead grass from the same area. The only thing I can think of is that my crazy neighbor threw a cup of something over the fence to kill the grass, but I'm not sure why the dogs would be so interested in it. If it was something to kill the grass, I'm definitely not cool with my dogs rolling around, sniffing, and eating whatever is there. So question 1 is, what are some solutions I can do along the fence to stop the grass from dying? The only thing I can think of is some sort of decorative brick that runs the entire length of the fence and grow the grass back. Question 2 is, does anybody have any sort of idea what could have caused the 2-foot circle of dead grass, but also why my dogs were so attracted to it? We live on the outskirts of a city, so there isn't much wildlife that could just waltz into the yard, urinate, and take off. Plus, it seemed to have happened overnight and is rather large. And yes, before anybody mentions it, I do have cameras. I just don't have any watching the backyard. I'll have to reposition them now. Now here are some of the top/relevant comments from the update post. Commenter 1 says, My first thought was antifreeze. I honestly don't know if this would kill grass. I feel I've heard animals are attracted to it. Sorry you have bad crap neighbors. OP says, this story is tame when it comes to her and her 40-year-old son, who lives with her. 2 months ago, he followed a 19-year-old girl, whom we know, home from our house. She called the cops. Cops pulled him over, and he told them he was going to sabotage her car, just because. Commenter 2 says, wait, I need to know how the cops handled it. Admitted attempt at harming someone? Your neighbors sound dangerous, dude. Definitely reposition those cameras and get soil samples. OP says, so the 19-year-old girl would beep the horn whenever she left our house. I'd say that's a fairly normal thing to do. You have to understand that my neighbor and her son hate everything and have a problem with everything. Girl leaves one night when it's dark out, maybe 9 o'clock at night, not real late. Gets in car, starts to drive off, and beeps horn. 40-year-old son must have been waiting in his car for her to leave because as soon as she drove past, his lights turned on and he started to follow. Girl was a little weirded out by it when she realized she was being followed. She made a few turns that could have been passed off as taking normal turns. He's still following. She then starts to make really obvious turns, like constant lefts, essentially going in a circle, and he's still following. She starts to panic a bit and doesn't know what to do, so she calls 911. I'm a 30-year-old guy, and if somebody was following me like that at night, I'd be a little worried too. She explains what's going on, and 911 tells her that the police are informed of the situation and tells her to drive to the nearest police station. They even stayed on the line with her to give her directions. She gets to the police station and pulls into the parking lot. 40-year-old virgin obviously keeps driving, but police pull out and immediately pull him over. 19-year-old girl and 40-year-old virgin are kept apart and questioned about what was going on. 19-year-old girl explains that she was over at our house and honks the horn whenever she leaves. Cops told her there is nothing illegal about that. 40-year-old virgin, though. He tells the cops that he thought the car was of a contractor that they had do work on their house, but never paid the guy for his work. He said that he thought that this was the contractor's way of basically effing with them for not paying. Cops asked what his intentions were once the car that he was following stopped. This guy openly admitted to the police that his plan was to find out where this person lived that he was following so that he could sabotage the car in order for it to stop honking the horn whenever it goes by their house. He gets slapped with a harassment charge. He was put on the spot, and I think that that's probably the only logical answer he could have come up with to keep him out of as much trouble as possible. He played dumb and said he thought it was somebody else and didn't realize who he was following. That's what they always do when I have had to get the cops involved with them in the past. They play dumb and act like they didn't mean to do anything. But I have it on camera, and whether or not you meant to do it, you still did it. Now, come on. You mean to tell me that, in his situation, he didn't know he was following a young, petite girl home? He obviously knew it happens whenever this specific car is at our house and had been watching it happen for a while. And how the F do you sabotage a car to keep it from honking the horn? Super shady stuff. Welcome to my life. Never had any sort of problems with anybody until I bought this house 2 years ago. I couldn't have moved next to worse people. Bonus story. I became friends with a guy who recently opened a shop in our town. He was a cop in town prior to opening up his shop. After I bought my house, I told him where it was. He essentially facepalmed himself and went on to warn me about my neighbor and told me stories and to be careful. He said the entire police force despises her, but there's not much they can do about her. I told myself to ignore her, which I have been, but when you're following people home from my house and possibly throwing crap into my yard to kill my grass/dogs, it's really hard to bite my tongue. ScalingStories Corner. So, I really needed to go to the comments section first this time because I was really shocked by the escalation in behavior. It was like sort of petty before with the throwing trash and stuff onto OP's property, but doing something to kill his grass and potentially even doing something to maybe hurt OP's dog made me really speechless. And then come to find out that the crazy neighbor lives with her son, and then he has that crazy story about him following that girl around? Like, yikes. Holy crap. These people are actually unhinged, and I'm more and more shocked that the cops can't do anything about these people except be helpless. Like, how do you even win in this situation? She's not leaving you alone. She has a crazy kid. I mean, they're both crazy. Let's be real. It's crazy squared living next door. And I thought I wouldn't be the type of person to fold first, but really with all that, I don't know. Maybe I'm shopping for a different place. And I concede. You win, crazy lady and crazy son. Congrats. Like, I didn't think I was going to move, but you got me. Fifth update, 3 years later. I'm going to cover some things in this post that may have been talked about in my other posts. I'm not going through and rereading all of them. We were warned that my neighbor has a problem with everything imaginable from the get go. We didn't realize how bad it really was until we were living next to her/them, 60 something year old lady and 40 something year old son. The majority of the problems were with her though. Over the past 3 years, we learned a lot about them from various people. Mainly, that my neighbor likes to stir up problems to get people pissed off at them. Then, when people get pissed off enough, they retaliate against my neighbor, and once that happens, my neighbor will take them to court. Believe me, I know it sounds effing crazy, but that's how it is. Example, when I had the police out for her trespassing and littering in my yard, I could have had her cited for those two things, but the police talked me out of it and told me that she would take it to court and fight it, even if she was going to lose. Also, the people that live on the other side of her other neighbors, have been going back and forth in court for the past 15 years with her. I never got any specifics on what, but from the one and only time I talked to those people, that's what they told me. My thought process is that she wants to get money out of people from taking them to court. I've lived next to these people for 3 years, and I have no idea what their motivation is in life or why they do what they do. So my neighbor likes to call the police and fire department a lot. Like, a lot. I have a friend who took an IT job at the call center that receives calls for people calling the police and fire department for the entire county. The people taking the calls told my IT friend that my neighbor is the most frequent caller in the entire county. The obvious thing to do is to let it iron itself out, and the police and fire companies will realize that she's full of crap, right? Wrong. I asked my IT friend how she can get away with calling that much. He said that when she makes a call, it's not really specific enough to blow off, but specific enough to where there might be an actual problem. A gray area. Example, if somebody is having a fire in their backyard, legally, following all the laws of our city, she will call the fire department, concerned about a fire because there's a lot of smoke in the neighborhood. This also goes for anybody that cooks out on their grill in the summertime, especially if you have a charcoal grill. She sees smoke, she calls the fire department. The thing with her calls though, is that 99% of the time, they are BS. But if there was an actual problem and she called about it and nobody responded, she would take the city to the cleaners over it. It gets old whenever the police and/or fire department show up to your door when you are doing normal everyday activities. They were the most bizarre people to live next to. I've tried to figure them out, but I simply couldn't. The best way I can describe it is this. You're playing a game with her whether you want to or not. And that game is home ownership. She makes the rules of the game. And when you break one of the rules of the game that she made up, she will have a referee look into it. Police/fire. If the referees don't find anything wrong, she will get upset and start doing things like throwing trash into your yard or killing your grass. The obvious answer to all of this is to stand my ground, and I did. But once you fight back, things are only going to snowball with the neighbor, which is why we decided to move. The people behind her actually just moved as well because of her. This was our first home, and people always say that owning a home isn't easy. It's not, but living next to that neighbor made things so much worse. At one point early on while living there, I asked myself if we were bad neighbors. Nope, we just didn't do things the way she wanted us to. So we put our house up for sale and found somebody to buy it at full price, and they would pay closing costs as well. We closed a few days ago and walked out with the check. We drove by the house we just sold and saw that the new people pulled up right behind my neighbor's car. That's another thing you did not do. You do not park behind her car, or she will call the police for you for being double parked or something. It's a public street, by the way. We saw that they were parked right behind her car. My girlfriend and I looked at each other and laughed. We then got a call from our realtor asking if we still had the keys from the old house. Crap. Forgot to hand them over at settlement. I wasn't about to go back to the old house and drop them off, so I had my realtor do it. She dropped the keys off and then called me again. She's aware of how crazy my old neighbor is. She says, "You're never going to believe this. The people that bought your house already had a run-in with the neighbor. They said she came out bitching about where they parked and that only she can park in front of her house, and that if they don't move, she'll have to call the police. The people that bought my house then said to my realtor, 'What's up with this lady? To which my realtor said, I'm not real sure. My seller always said they were quiet people that kept to themselves. This is only the beginning of a long road for the people that bought my house. It wasn't even 30 minutes after they pulled up in front of the house, and they already had a problem with the neighbor. I wish I could have told the people buying my house to not buy it because of the neighbor. I don't want anybody to go through what we did, but if I if I did tell people, then I would still be living the nightmare. Scaling Stories Corner. Literally. I felt like I was OP in that situation. At least the way he described everything. Like, I imagined if I was in this situation, I would have tried to fight back a little, but I wouldn't have expected them to go full back crazy loco in like my very valid retaliation of trying to get them to leave me the F alone. And then after the update before this one, I thought about all the possibilities that I had to still lead a happy life. And it was like, oh damn, there is no happy life here. I just gotta move somewhere else. And then OP's like, it's GG, she wins, we have to sell the house and move. It sucks for the people who just moved in, but yeah, the baton has been passed, if you know what I mean. So good luck to them. Or well, this update was made in 2019, so it's been 7 years since. I wonder if we'll get any follow-ups from people who knew the neighbor or something like that, posted on Reddit one day. Hello! I just found out that OP was commenting on the best of thread and found this small little interaction. It was kind of funny, so I'm gonna record something right now so you can see it too. Commenter 1 says, why wouldn't you warn the new neighbors about your neighbor? OP, downvoted, says, hey, thank you for bailing us out from this crappy neighbor. You have to deal with them now. Do you think anybody would be willing to move in? We would have never gotten out of that situation. Commenter 2 says, bad person. Commenter 3, downvoted, says, you did what you had to do. The responses here are diluted, and I'll take my downvotes for saying so. Someone expects you to adjust seller negotiations over this? Insane stuff. The buyer has a responsibility too. It's not the seller's problem, and you clearly already had enough of them. That being said, I imagine myself being insanely spite-driven to the point of trying to destroy this woman, so you selling your house is quite the restrained approach. It gives readers no catharsis because you willingly gave up on all your avenues to fight back, so they'll attack you over whatever they can. But also, none of us have been in this type of insane situation. Yet another reason to not take the peanut gallery too seriously. Okay friends, so that concludes today's video. Leave a like and comment down below to let me know what you thought of it, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Take care.